Hi, I'm Chet Justice. We're in Seattle, Washington at Kscope 14. I'm sitting with Dominic Delmolino. Dominic, thanks for joining us this morning.
Great to be here.
So this is not your first Kscope conference.
Not my first rodeo.
So what's one of your favorite things about this particular conference?
I like the fact that, and actually if you read this month's or July, August Oracle magazine, I talk about this conference. And I talk about the fact I like that you get developers, you get DBAs, you get end users, you get business folks. So there's a nice mix of people here,
right,
which I really enjoy.
Now, you don't like the term DBA. You don't like the distinction between DBA and developer. Is that true?
I don't. One of the sessions we had, we talked about the fact that DBAs and developers self-segregate sometimes because they identify themselves that way, and so I don't like the labeling and maybe the stereotyping that goes along with some of those roles.
Right.
I like the fact that we're here to solve. One of the women said the other night in our session, we're here to solve business problems, and so I need people. I don't need DBAs or developers.
Right,
I need folks to come together and work on the data, and whether it's a developer that does it or DBA does it, I don't really care what they call themselves, but we got to get the system out. And so that's why I don't like that specific label. So I like to use the term, data engineer, someone who makes data available for the application.
Yeah, I should have borrowed you yesterday for an interview I had to do. They were asking you about the DBA developer relationship.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I didn't do too hot.
Oh, I don't believe that.
Have you presented this week?
I'm presenting today at 11:15.
Okay.
Tips and techniques for database schema refactoring.
That's some cool stuff.
I think so.
And now,
I'm excited about it.
Of course.
You can tell, right?
Yes, absolutely. Now, what can you talk about what that is specifically? Go into some of the details.
Sure. For today's session, I'm going to narrow it down, and what I'm going through is when I have a lot of developers on a team and they're working with a database, how do I make changes and not break their code?
Okay.
So what's the easiest way to evolve the database or to change the database or change the table structures, things that store the data, and not cause grief for the developers?
Right.
And so I want to get rid of that reputation that when someone changed the database, oh, the application broke. And so how do I change the database in a refactoring way so that the developers can continue to work with it and not have to dramatically change their mindset? Or they can change it later. Maybe they can defer their change after I've introduced mine, but not break anything.
Okay.
Key thing is not breaking anything.
Not breaking things. That's
Yeah.
usually good, which is kind of anti-developer, isn't it? We like to break stuff.
Well, really good developers, right? You write a test that shows that something's broken, and you write code to show that it now works.
Right.
And so, I guess, yeah, in that sense, you're constantly identifying ways in which the application is broken, and then adding some code to make it work the way people want it to.
Right. Now, you mentioned testing.
Yes.
What exactly is testing?
So I will be talking. What exactly? I've heard of this testing thing. And the idea, what I've been seeing a lot of developers do now is what they call test-driven development. What's neat about that is instead of going and getting a business requirement, you describe the business requirement as a test case that your system has to meet. And so you write the test, and then when your code runs and the test runs and the test passes, your code's done. And so instead of saying, well, here's the requirement, I wrote code, and then someone has to kind of match them up, I can say, well, I'll write a test that in code objectively identifies the requirement. And now when I finish my code and run the test, I know I've met the requirement. And so this is a way to collapse the requirement to test thing, and requirement, write code, and then test. It's almost like requirement becomes test that I write code so it passes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense.
So it's not about writing tests, it's about capturing requirements as something that's testable. So when I write my code and it works, we don't argue about whether or not I wrote it correctly. Because that happens a lot. Right?
Yes.
I didn't mean that. I wanted this, not that.
Right.
Oh, I just spent 3 months writing that code that you're now telling me it isn't doing what you want. And so that no one likes that.
Right. Sessions. Have you been to a lot of sessions this year?
Yeah, I've probably been to 2 or 3, maybe as many as 4 a day.
Favorite one yet? Do you have a favorite?
I like to go to sessions sometimes where I don't know anything, so I learn something new.
Right.
And that's one reason I like this conference. There's a lot of variety in the sessions. I just came from Jonathan Lewis's session, which was packed to the point I put on Twitter, we're going to need a bigger boat because there are people sitting on the floor, they're standing room only. And so he was talking about designing efficient SQL, which I'm a big fan of. How can I write the least amount of code that does the least amount of work and takes the least amount of time to get an answer.
Right.
And so that I really enjoyed that session.
Kscope 15 is in Hollywood, Florida.
The Florida.
I won't use the other name that we refer to it from the
It's in Hollywood, Florida.
It's in Hollywood, Florida. Yeah. You think you're going to be attending next year?
I think so. It's East Coast, so it's easy for me. I'm in Washington, D.C., so it's a quick flight down.
Right. Do you think we'll go to a baseball game?
I guess the Marlins would be the closest. Well, we have to go.
Okay. Well, I look forward to that.
I do too.
Dominic, thank you for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me,
Appreciate it.
Chet. Appreciate it.